Wait a sec. I'm not sure if I'm recording now. Am I recording?
I see that you are.
I am.
I've got, it says record.
Excellent. Hello, everyone. I'd like today to welcome Paul Cleary from Caribtours. He's Managing Director of Caribtours, company we deal with quite a lot for the Caribbean and for parts of Europe as well. Caribtours have been in operation for a long time. Paul will probably tell you very briefly in a couple of minutes how long for. And then we're just generally going to talk about travel and the future 2021 for all of us. Welcome, Paul.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
No, tell me a little bit briefly about Caribtours.
Well, Caribtours, we are one of the UK's oldest and most established luxury tour operators. We've been trading out of our offices in Fulham for 41 years. So we haven't had many years like this one, but 41 happy years. We started a full program to Jamaica back in 1979, selling through travel agents. And over the years, we've grown, but we're still a small, relatively small family-owned business. Indian Ocean, Middle East, luxury Caribbean, and luxury Europe. So that's us in a nutshell.
Good, thank you. So last week, well, in fact, the last 6 weeks or so, I think we've all had quite a positive time. Before last weekend's announcements, the travel corridors have definitely helped sell holidays, haven't they, Paul? How? What have you mainly been selling then in the last 5 or 6 weeks?
Okay, so yeah, they've been surprisingly strong. So after the full lockdown that we all had to endure as a country, really since the end of June, when the travel corridors were first announced, most of the Caribbean destinations, I mean, the Caribbean for Caribtours, our biggest destinations are Barbados, Antigua, St. Lucia, Grenada. They were all announced as safe, if that's the term we're using. And we've been selling pretty well. There was a lot of pent-up demand, Martyn. I don't know whether you experienced that, because so many people missed their Easter holidays for reasons we understand, and they missed their summer holidays as well. So we were selling very well. So the Caribbean, I mean, British Airways and Virgin fly almost daily to the Caribbean, and they recommenced their flights in July and August. So contrary to what it feels like, the Caribbean has been open for business and accepting British tourists or European tourists since around July, August time. So, and we've sold a lot of Antigua, a lot of St. Lucia, and quite a bit of Barbados.
Excellent. And in the past few weeks, I think you've travelled a little bit, haven't you? Have you just been to Europe? What I'd like to know is, how did you find that whole travel experience? You know, airports, check-in at hotels, that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, we're mad keen travellers. Maybe like a lot of your like a lot of your guests and clients. We flew to France at the very end of July, very beginning of this is before France was in its most recent lockdown, and we were just really keen to get down to the Alps to see. We have a house down there, and it was incredible, and it was so reassuring, Martyn. I can't tell you. We got used to. We were wearing face masks. The experience at Heathrow Terminal 5 was absolutely seamless. The touch points, the hand sanitizers, the social distancing, everybody wearing masks. It worked like clockwork, and I was so incredibly relieved. Not just for me and my family, but for someone who makes a living out of selling holidays. Sure. It was so well through, and I've got to tell you, BA, we flew with BA down to France, to Geneva. They were incredible, and it felt safe, and it felt like it's a situation that we're all going to have to accept for a while longer. But yeah, and then I went to Italy 2 weeks later, BA again, exactly the same experience.
A few people have asked me, Paul, on the aircraft, how do they handle the social distancing? Do they attempt to do that at all?
Yeah, it's a really valid question, and I think everyone wants to know, how does that work? So they do after a fashion. So face masks are mandatory, as you'd all expect, and I think we're all used to that now. None of us like doing it, and in the beginning it felt claustrophobic, but we're all getting used to that. You get on to one of the things they did on short haul, for example, and they're doing it on long haul as well. They're boarding in row, when they board you on the aircraft. How do I explain this? They board you in row number order. So let's say they fill it up from the back, so that people aren't pushing past each other or jostling. Then when you're in your seat, you're asked to stay in your seat rather than walk up and down the aisles.
Do they allow you to use the facilities on board? Because I mean, there's a lot of people who travel who've got weak bladders, as we all know.
Yeah, no, they absolutely do. And all they do, and it's really sensible, and it's so civilised, Martin, they ask you to just observe if the toilet facilities are engaged, stay in your seat. So what you would find on aircraft usually is possibly sometimes a queue of people waiting to use the restroom. So you're asked to stay in your seat. And it also, I've got to tell you this, it brought out the best manners and most considerate behaviour. So I flew to France and back over a week to Geneva, to Switzerland. I went to Pisa and Bologna a week later, and I had to go to Ireland for a family matter. So I was on 6 flights in the period of 3 weeks, and on all occasions, whether it was BA, EasyJet or Ryanair in those occasions, it brought out the best in people. Once you're in your seat, you could be sat next to a stranger, and there's no escaping that, but you have a face mask on.
Yeah. So. Have you stayed in any hotels on your travels?
Yeah, I have. I've stayed in hotels in Florence and in Bologna.
I imagine they were pretty good, because Italy have handled this thing relatively well, haven't they? In the early days, they had a problem. They were hit pretty hard, but I think now you have to wear face masks out in public as well, don't you? Now in Italy.
That's right, and I mean, a lot of these conversations, Martin, they're so unthinkable, aren't they? From if we'd said a year ago that we'd be having these conversations, but I think we all accept that this is, if for those of us who love to travel or who want to travel, we accept that in the same way for those of us who love to go to restaurants, we accept that we must walk in with a face covering. The hotels. Italy was exceptional about it. France was exceptional about it. And again, I think especially in Italy, in northern Italy, in Tuscany, where I was, because they had such a terrible time so early on.
Yeah.
Well, back in February, they got very badly hit.
Yeah.
Beginning of March. They take it seriously, and they expect everyone to take it seriously. And I do believe, I'm a firm believer that one of the positives that has come out of this is it's bringing out a respect for others and a consideration to do the right thing, maybe do your civic duty a little bit.
Yes, no, I agree with you there, Paul. Just going back to the Caribbean, you've probably had contact with most of the Caribbean islands, especially the ones you sell, obviously, and also a lot of the hotels. They're all, from what I have read, most of the in fact, all of the hotels they all have COVID measures in place, don't they?
Yeah.
So I think in the Caribbean, and probably because of the climate, it's quite easy to do. Restaurants generally people eat outside, don't they? But have some of the hotels closed their indoor restaurants and moved everything outside?
In almost all cases, the restaurants are outside or in open-sided buildings, or open-sided rooms, if that makes sense. And I think the Caribbean has handled everything so far incredibly well. In terms, they first of all, they closed their border. These are very small islands which import everything on aeroplanes, and that includes diseases. So they closed their borders very, very quickly. But I think it was on the 17th of March, many closed their borders. So they have predominantly remained COVID-free for the entirety of this, and they want to remain COVID-free. So for those people traveling to the Caribbean, in almost all cases, you're expected to travel. Everyone on that aircraft will be in possession of a negative PCR test. Now, the added layer of inconvenience for you, Martyn, and for your customers and your guests, and for my customers as well. But they are determined to keep it that safe. So everyone, you'll know aircraft that everyone is negative.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point, actually, Paul. Have you noticed that there are some people who won't book because they've got to have they've got to have that PCR test? I think PCR is the right word.
Yeah, no, we haven't had that. I mean, there is an inconvenience, and I'm afraid to say it. And of course, yeah. I mean, there's no. We're a family of 5, and we're going to Barbados for Christmas. Yeah, it adds cost on. And there isn't people saying they don't want to do a PCR test, Martyn. I think what we're experiencing at the moment, there is a split between those people who want to travel regardless.
Yeah.
They're desperate to get away. And there are those people who are nervous of travelling until it comes down, or please God, a vaccine is found. So I think the population is split between the more cautious and the not so cautious, and I think that's completely understandable.
Sure. Now, okay, so I think Antigua is obviously going to be a big seller over the next 3 or 4 months. You're expecting a busy December, I hope. I think we all are hoping. I mean, December traditionally, for us anyway, it's kind of tailed off. The first couple of weeks are a little bit busy, and then it kind of dies around the 13th, 14th of December, especially when the schools break up. What do you reckon is going to happen this December?
I think the whole world is upside down, and all the booking patterns that we're used to are upside down as well. So we'd be the same at Caribtours. We would always find that December is a bit of a funny month because it's a short month, because between people taking time off for work for Christmas, on Christmas parties and shopping and nativities for children and everything else that goes on, December is ordinarily a quiet month for us. But what we have found is the pent-up demand for people to get away and to book holidays. And I'm sure it was the same in Claygate as it was in West Sussex, which is where I am. After the October half term, we've just endured with that driving, miserable rain for a week. People are itching to get away. So
yeah, I think you're right.
We're expecting the lockdown. Yeah, and we're expecting the lockdown to be lifted on the 2nd of December. And we're expecting there to be, a mini peak season, Martyn. You know what January is normally like. We're December.
Yeah, and tell me, what Christmas availability for the Caribbean? Probably there isn't any. Would that be about right?
Yeah, there's pockets opening up, because ordinarily, so Christmas in the Caribbean is the busiest time of year. So ordinarily, from the 15th of December onwards, the air seats are all gone, and the hotels are all packed out. It is tight. It is tight, but you know, all of this uncertainty has made some people revisit their plans. So there are still trips to be had, but there's not much available.
Okay, and then we move on to February half term. Probably that's fairly busy right now, I would think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So February half term. So we've done quite a lot in the last. We've been incredibly busy taking new bookings, especially since the beginning of October, Martyn. And I can tell you the dates that have been filling up. November and December have been selling, and there's been so much demand for that's relatively late business to go to the Caribbean, especially, and the Maldives in November and December. And then the next big one is February half term. So that's a hugely important time for us, and most of our customers would either go skiing or go to the Caribbean in February, and that's filling up.
Okay, let's talk briefly about Europe, because I know you sell Europe as well. Good hotels in Europe, in certain parts of Europe. I think there's going to be a real shortage of availability for Europe, especially in peak season when the schools are off. I don't know what you think, because what's going to happen is all of those people who were booked in July and August, a good majority of them have rebooked for next July and August. And then you've got all the people who didn't go away this year, who didn't have anything booked, are going to want to go away. There's probably a lot of people are thinking, oh, I'll leave it. I'm not sure how the world's going to pan out. And I also think that there'll be an availability on airline seats, an issue. We've lost one or two airlines, and probably, I don't know whether we'll lose another one. I don't know. It's hard to say. How do you foresee the July-August period, particularly in Europe?
Yeah, I think that is a really, as someone who sells holidays, it's going to be a nice problem to have, because that's exactly it. So if we looked at summer 2020, we had a mass of bookings wanting to go to my luxury hotels in Greece, in Tenerife, Lanzarote, in Cyprus, and in Italy. They didn't cancel; they've just deferred for next year. So there's a false picture. Well, it's not a false picture; it's a true picture, but it's looking incredibly good at the moment, this far out. Which is there's clearly going to be a squeeze on availability, whether that's with the airline or the hotel. But
and
I can always get them.
How do you see prices as well, Paul? Flight prices, I reckon, will be a little bit higher, because they'll know that they've got that, that there's going to be a demand. Hotels are a little more realistic, do you think?
Yeah, do you know, it's difficult. There's so many things that govern hotel prices. I think all the early stages we're having, you would think in any normal world that after a pandemic or during a pandemic such as this, that hotels would react and airlines would react in a way to cut prices, cut airfares to stimulate demand. Quite the opposite has happened. And they need the money more than ever. And so they're holding their prices, and in some case going ahead with their planned rate increases. The other problem we have to be careful of, I won't get political, but we're doing this on the day of the results coming through of the US election, but exchange rate, there's a lot of opportunity for volatility on exchange rate, whether that's with Brexit, dare I bring it up, or with what's happening in the US at the moment. And exchange rate actually has more of a profound effect on my prices than anything else.
Yes.
Because,
I mean, the euro at the moment, what are you sort of getting at the moment? Is it about 113?
Yeah. It's quite bad. I mean, having said all of this, during the pandemic, the currency hasn't done anything wildly ridiculous. One of the reasons for that, of course, is because the pandemic has affected the European countries as much as it has affected us. Yeah. It's political things such as Brexit or the American election depending, God forbid, what happens in the US today, depending on what happens, there is opportunity for pound to strengthen greatly, which is good for holidaymakers, obviously, in terms of the stronger the pound is, the less expensive our holidays appear. But things can go the other way as well. So we monitor exchange rate about 20 times a day for the last few months.
Okay, no, that's good. Thanks. I think probably before we finish, we can't end a conversation about travel, can we, without talking about the dreadful scenario we had back in March, when we all went into a lockdown and pretty much the whole of the summer holidays were cancelled, weren't they? How many bookings did you have to work through in those early days in it was end of March, April time, that sort of 8-week period where people had paid their balances and were expecting to go on holiday, and it was clear they weren't going to be able to go? What sort of numbers were you looking at?
I mean, it was absolutely dreadful, and you know, as it turned out, Martyn, we didn't get a single departure away from, let's say, the 15th of March or maybe the 17th of March until, I don't know, the end of July. But at the time, you don't know it's going to last that long. Now we all have the benefit of hindsight. So back in March, you're almost doing a month in advance of these refunds or rebooking people. The long story short is, I think I've refunded about £2.5 million. And that's people who didn't want to, they weren't in a position to commit to a future holiday. And they thought, well, I'll have my money back, and that's absolutely fine. But I mean, I think 60-70% of our booking opted to rebook.
Yes.
or accept a refund credit note, which was
Yeah. So I think,
yeah.
quite honestly, there was a lot of honeymoons, wasn't there? A lot of people were getting married, and you can't just say, oh, okay, then just shove it forward 12 months, because you
No,
find that the venue is going to be unavailable. Because I know I've got clients who had honeymoons, weddings and honeymoons booked for this year, who haven't been able to book a
no.
venue for next year, and they're getting married now in 2022.
And I think that is exactly it. And I think for us, I mean, we cottoned onto this very, very early on. Some of our customers book with us 2 or 3 times a year, every year, and they're quite happy to have their money stay with us because they know that they're going to utilise that credit. We'll be very clear, some people have booked with us for the first time, and a holiday to the Caribbean is relatively expensive.
Yes.
They were comfortable leaving that money with us. They would rather have that money back and rebook when the time is right. And one-off events, whether it's a 50th birthday celebration or a special wedding anniversary or a honeymoon, it isn't as simple. It isn't as simple. So every customer of ours has got a different motivation, and I think it's important for all holiday companies, and some did it better than others, just to be decent and be honest and listen to your customers, or listen to Green Star Travel or your travel agent and say, okay, well, if they're more comfortable having their money back, we'll send them a refund check. And then we kind of know that when the world returns to some sort of normality, that booking comes back to us anyway. So
yeah, that's right. And I think it's safe to say that there will probably be less airlines, less tour operators, and less travel agents. I mean, there is going to be a bit of a hit from this.
yeah,
But
yeah.
hopefully
I think,
going forward,
yeah.
The world's going to be a different place, isn't it? It's going to be, I'm not going to say the world's going to be smaller, because that's a stupid thing to say, but I think the world will be different, and the market for travel will probably be smaller.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely true. I think that's absolutely true. And I think I'd end on this as well. I mean, and I absolutely believe this. I think one of the things the pandemic has taught an awful lot of us, and listen, I sell holidays for a living, but I do book my own holidays through other companies as well. So I'm a traveller. I'm a client like everybody else.
Yeah.
You notice that how the difference of service you've received, I think, if you book through an independent travel agent in your village or in your town, someone you know, or someone you've got a relationship, or someone like Caribtours, I think the service, because all of this uncertainty mine and all of this nervousness and all of this worry and can I and can't I, and what am I allowed to do, what am I not allowed to do, I think for everyone, and I've had this experience this year, who've booked stuff online, who've booked stuff on Expedia or Booking.com or HomeAway, or what's that one, where you rent the rooms, Airbnb.
Yeah.
If you've booked, if that's and you've booked your flights online with BA, if anyone has been able to get hold of BA customer service between the month of March and the month of July, then they must have been holding for a very long time. So I do think none of us wanted this horrible situation, but it has been an opportunity for those old-fashioned of us who do things the right way and offer good.
No, you're absolutely right. I think the hardest job I have had in obtaining refunds and changing people's bookings has been with companies of size, the bigger companies. And I know that they've got issues because they run call centers, they probably furloughed 60% of the staff, and they're dealing with thousands and thousands of people who want to change. So I understand where they're coming from. And, on a personal note, I know that with Caribtours, we had clients who were booked to the Algarve in the summer and the Caribbean, well, fun enough, in the next couple of weeks they were going. And it's been easy to get hold of you. And things have been sorted out relatively quickly. If you had booked with one of these large companies that carry 2 million passengers a year, it's going to be a different situation.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, but Paul, in closing, I just want to thank you for your honesty over the last what have we been 20 odd minutes. It's been interesting to chat to you, and I think the message for clients is that this will be over soon. And next year we'll all be able to go on holiday.
Absolutely.
Good. Thanks a lot, Paul.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
So hopefully I'll talk to you again soon, eh? Thanks for doing that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, cheers, Paul. Bye-bye.
Cheers, mate.